The massive trade station Nexus 7 hung like a silver spider in the void above Kepler 440b, its spinning rings catching the pale light of the distant star. Cargo ships from dozens of worlds docked at its ports, their hulls scarred from countless jumps through hyperspace. In the lower markets, where the air recyclers couldn't quite mask the smell of alien spices and engine oil, Lee Hannah moved quietly between the stalls. She looked ordinary enough, a small human woman in worn trader's clothes, her black hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Her cargo crate hovered behind her on repulsors, unmarked and unremarkable. The Zephyrian merchants barely glanced at her as she passed their crystalline displays, and the hulking Gordoni traders grunted dismissively when she nodded in greeting. Humans were common enough on Nexus 7, usually scraping by on the edges of Galactic Commerce. Hannah stopped at a maintenance corridor, where a group of human colonists waited in the shadows. Their clothes were patched and dirty, their faces gaunt with the look of people who'd been living on protein paste for too long. A woman held a sick child who ate with each breath. "You have the medicine," the woman whispered in Korean. Her voice desperate. Hannah nodded and opened her crate. Inside were sealed vials of human-manufactured antibiotics, their labels written in multiple languages, including the flowing script of the Galactic Trade Authority. "These will help your daughter. The dosage instructions are on each vial." She handed over the medicine. Red lights suddenly bathed the corridor. Security drones dropped from the ceiling, their multiple eyes focusing on the group with mechanical precision. Heavy footsteps echoed as Gordoni security officers rounded the corner, their massive forms filling the narrow space. "Halt, illegal trade in progress." The lead officer's voice boomed through his translator. His forearms gestured with practiced authority, energy weapons glowing into of his hands. The colonists scattered like startled birds, but Hannah remained perfectly still. She watched calmly as the security team surrounded her, their weapons trained on her small form. "Contraband medical supplies," announced a floating scanner drone, its blue beam washing over her crate. "Classification, restricted, penalty, immediate detention." One of the Gordoni officers grabbed Hannah's arm with surprising gentleness. Surprising, because his three-fingered hand could have crushed her bones without effort. "You're under arrest, human. Station regulations prohibit unlicensed medical trade. I need to contact the Terran embassy," Hannah said quietly, her voice carrying clearly despite the chaos. "I have rights under the Galactic Commerce Accords." The officer's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. "Embassy. For a smuggler. Save your breath, little trader." They escorted her through the station's gleaming corridors, past shops selling exotic foods and weapons from across the galaxy. Other humans they passed looked away quickly, recognizing the universal posture of someone being taken to detention. The security team's boots rang against the metal decking as they walked, a rhythm that spoke of routine and boredom. The detention center occupied an entire deck in the station's low levels. The Gordani officer processed her with efficient indifference, scanning her biometrics and confiscating her personal items, her communicator, her identification papers, even her simple trader's license. All disappeared into evidence specs. "Magistrate Velta will see you now," the officer announced, shoving her into a repulsor lift that carried them up to the judicial chambers. Magistrate Velta was a Zephyrian, his crystalline form refracting the chamber's lights into rainbow patterns on the walls. His faceted eyes regarded Hannah with the cold assessment of someone who'd seen thousands of petty criminals pass through his court. "Another human smuggler," he said, his voice like wind through crystal chimes. "The charges are clear. Illegal trade in restricted medical supplies. Standard sentence. 6 months hard labor in the asteroid mines. Your Honor," Hannah began, stepping forward slightly, "I request representation and the right to contact." Silence. Velta's form flared brighter. You humans come to our station, break our laws, and then waste our time with legal technicalities. The evidence is clear. The sentence is final. His gavel, a crystal formation that grew from his bench, struck once with a pure, ringing tone. Just like that, her fate was sealed. The same Gordani officers who'd arrested her now led her away, to the detention blocks, her requests for a communication falling on deaf ears. The detention block was a maze of energy barriers and floating cells. Hannah found herself sharing space with other humans, all of them bearing the same defeated expression she'd seen too many times before. One of them, a young man with calloused hands and the lean build of someone who worked in zero gravity, looked up as she entered. Kim Jinwoo. He introduced himself in Korean, his voice bitter, spacecraft engineer. They got me for illegal modifications to my own ship. He gestured on the cell. Welcome to alien justice, where humans are guilty, until proven. Well, still guilty. Hannah sat down calmly on the hard bench, her expression thoughtful rather than worried. She pulled out a small notebook that had somehow escaped confiscation and began writing in neat, precise characters. What are you doing? Jinwoo asked. Taking notes, she replied simply. Documenting violations of interstellar law, denial of communication rights, lack of proper representation, sentencing without investigation. She looked up at him with dark eyes that held more steel than despair. Someone needs to keep track. Round them, the station hummed with the endless business of interstellar trade, unaware that they'd just made a very serious mistake. The sleek diplomatic vessel Harmony's edge dropped out of hyperspace with a flash of blue light. That made every sensor on Nexus 7 scream warnings. The ship was unmistakably Terran. Its hull bore the distinctive Earth insignia and the flowing script that marked it as an official embassy craft. And like the battered cargo haulers that usually docked at the station, this vessel moved with the quiet authority of a predator. Station controls communications board lit up like a festival as the ship requested immediate priority docking. The Zephyrian controller, his crystalline form flickering with nervous energy, tried to route them to the standard diplomatic berth. Negative. Control. Came a crisp response from the ship's captain. Ambassador Park Min-ho requires emergency docking at the judicial ring. This is a matter of diplomatic immunity. Within minutes. The Harmony's edge had locked onto docking. The 7, just 3 levels below Magistrate Velta S chambers. The bay's atmospheric processes whined as they adjusted to accommodate human requirements, and the massive airlock doors sealed with a sound like thunder. Ambassador Park Min-ho stepped off his ship like he owned the station. He was tall for a human, with silver threading through his black hair and the kind of presence that made even the massive Gordani security guards step aside. His diplomatic uniform was immaculate, every medal and ribbon placed with military precision. Behind him walked 2 human marines in powered armor, their weapons mag-locked but visible. Where's Deputy Ambassador Lee Hannah? His voice carried the kind of authority that cut through the babble of alien languages in the corridors. Station personnel scattered like leaves before a storm as he strode toward the judicial chambers. The detention center's duty officer, a nervous pixie class, maintenance droid, buzzed around Park's head like an agitated insect. Sir, visiting hours are restricted. You must file proper. Park's glare could have melted hull plating. I'm Ambassador Park Min-ho of the Terran Federation. I am here on official business regarding a diplomatic officer illegally detained by this station. Stand aside. The droid circuits practically sparked with confusion. In the detention block, Kim Jinwoo looked up from his bunk as alarms began sounding throughout the facility. What's all that noise? He asked Hannah, who had been writing steadily in her notebook. Finally smiled. That would be my rescue. The doors to Magistrate Velta S chambers burst open with enough force to rattle the crystal formations that served as decoration. The Zephyrian magistrate's form flared with indignation as Park strode in, his marines flanking him like iron sentinels. "How dare you interrupt these proceedings?" Velta's voice rang like breaking glass. "This is a court of law. This is a diplomatic incident," Park replied coldly, producing a holographic display from his wrist unit. The Terran Federation seal rotated slowly in the air between them, its authority unmistakable. "I am here to secure the immediate release of Deputy Ambassador Lee Hanna, who was illegally detained and sentenced without proper identification." Velta's crystalline form dimmed with what might have been confusion. "Deputy Ambassador." "Impossible. The human is a common smuggler, caught red-handed with contraband medical supplies." Park's laugh had no humor in it. "Magistrate, meet Deputy Ambassador Lee Hanna of the Terran Federation Diplomatic Corps," he gestured. And his wrist display projected a holographic image. Hanna in full diplomatic dress, standing beside the Terran president at a state function. "She has been operating undercover for the past 3 months, investigating reports of systematic discrimination against human traders on this station." The silence that followed was so complete that the station's atmospheric recyclers seemed to roar like starship engines. Even the ever-present hum of the gravity generators felt loud. That's impossible," Velta stammered, his crystal form flickering like a dying light. "She was selling illegal medical supplies to colonists." Medical supplies that were entirely legal under Galactic Trade Authority regulations, Puck continued remorselessly. Supplies that were being deliberately classified as contraband by corrupt station officials to create artificial shortages and drive up prices. He activated another hologram, this one showing shipping manifests and authorization codes. Every vial in her possession was properly documented and cleared for distribution. The magistrate's chambers suddenly felt very small. Velta's security detail, the same Gordoni officers who had arrested Hanna, now looked uncertain, their weapons lowering slightly. "You see, Magistrate," Pock said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, "when you sentenced Deputy Ambassador Hanna to hard labor without allowing her to contact the embassy, without providing legal representation, and without proper investigation, you didn't just break interstellar law. You created a diplomatic crisis that will echo all the way to the Galactic Council. Through the chamber's transperistal windows, more ships could be seen dropping out of hyperspace, Terran vessels, their hulls gleaming with military efficiency. The rescue had become a fleet operation. Velta's form was now barely glowing, his confidence evaporating like atmosphere through a hull breach. We followed standard procedures for human detainees. Standard procedures." One of Park's Marines spoke for the first time, his voice amplified by his helmet's speakers. "Yes, sir." "Those standard procedures just violated about 17 different diplomatic treaties. In the detention center below, Kim Jinwoo watched through the energy barrier as guards rushed past in obvious panic. They really messed up, didn't they?" he asked. Hanna closed her notebook with a satisfied snap. Magistrate Velta just learned that sometimes the quiet human in the corner isn't as helpless as she appears. She stood up, smoothing her simple trader's clothes. "I believe my right is here." The station's communication systems crackled too. Life as emergency messages flowed between Nexus 7 and government centers across a dozen worlds. What had started as a simple arrest of a human smuggler had just become the kind of incident that toppled governments and rewrote treaties. Ambassador. Park smiled grimly as he watched Velta's crystalline form dim with growing horror. The magistrate was finally beginning to understand just how badly he had miscalculated. The diplomatic quarters aboard Nexus 7 had been hastily converted for Deputy Ambassador Lee Hanna's use. But she barely noticed the upgraded accommodations. Her temporary office buzzed with activity as secure quantum communicators linked her directly to Earth's diplomatic headquarters. Holographic displays showed shipping records, trade manifests, and prisoner files, evidence of something far worse than simple prejudice. Hannah had traded her humble trader's clothes for the sharp uniform of a Terran diplomatic officer, complete with the silver insignia that marked her as one of Earth's most skilled investigators. Her fingers moved across the quantum keyboard with practiced efficiency, pulling up file after file of suspicious activity. Computer. Cross-reference all human detentions in the past 18 months with cargo seizures. She commanded the stations. I, now required to provide full cooperation under diplomatic protocols, responded immediately. Processing. Correlation coefficient of 97% detected. Human traders detained show direct correlation with high-value cargo confiscations. Ambassador Park leaned over her shoulder, studying the data streams they've been running. A systematic operation: rest the humans, steal their cargo, then sell it through shell companies. The door chimed, and to Terran Marines escorted in a human prisoner. Choi Sun-ho looked tired and beaten down, his engineer's coverall stained with months of hard labor, but his eyes held the sharp intelligence of someone who'd been watching and waiting. Sun-ho, Hannah said gently, switching to Korean. I know this is difficult, but I need you to tell me everything you've seen. Sun-ho sat down heavily, his hands shaking slightly. I've been here 8 months. Arrested for illegal engine modifications, which is ridiculous because I designed those engines myself. But that's not the worst part. He looked up at her with hunted eyes. They've been using us, Ambassador. Human prisoners don't just work in the mines. We maintain their equipment, repair their systems, even upgrade their technology. All for free. Hannah's expression darkened. Forced labor. Continue. Station Commander Zixka has been selling our confiscated cargo to private buyers. I've seen the manifest logs. Medical supplies, rare earth metals, even military-grade electronics. Meanwhile, the humans who own those goods are breaking rocks. In the asteroid belt, the holographic display shifted as Hannah pulled up Commander Zixka's files. The Craxian commander appeared in three-dimensional detail, a reptilian humanoid with scales that shifted color with his mood, multiple eyes that could track all targets simultaneously, and claws that could slice through steel. Tell me about the commander, Hannah said. Sun-ho's face hardened. Zixka calls humans useful pets. He likes to show off to visiting dignitaries by demonstrating how trainable we are. Makes us perform maintenance tasks while he explains how inferior human technology is, using tools we built ourselves. Through the officers' viewports, they could see the massive cargo bays where Terran investigation teams were now conducting their own searches. Forensic drones zipped between shipping containers, their scanners revealing hidden compartments and falsified documentation. Computer, show me Commander Zixka's personal finances. Hannah ordered. Access restricted. Craxian privacy protocols override with diplomatic authority Omega-7. Park interrupted. This is an official investigation into treaty violations. The display shimmered, then revealed a web of bank accounts and shell companies stretching across 3-star systems. Zixka's personal wealth had increased by over 100% in the past year, all traced to the sale of salvaged materials and unclaimed cargo. They're not even hiding it well, Hannah muttered, copying the financial records to her secure drives. Sun-ho, I need you to identify other human prisoners who might have witnessed this operation. There's Kim Dae-ho. He's a cargo specialist who watched them repackage his own shipment and sell it to Gordani merchants. And Lee Kyung. She's a pilot whose ship was confiscated for safety violations but is now being used for the commander's purse. Onal transport. The investigation room's door burst open as one of the Terran Marines rushed in. Ambassador, you need to see this. We found something in the storage bay. They followed the Marine through the station's corridors, past groups of alien workers. who now watched the humans with nervous respect. The storage bay was massive, filled with containers that stretched up into the darkness like metallic towers. Here, the Marine said, leading them to a sealed section marked with Craxian security symbols. We found this hidden behind false walls. Inside the secret compartment were hundreds of containers bearing human shipping labels, medical, supplies, rare metals, advanced electronics, even personal belongings. All of it supposedly contraband that had been confiscated from human traders. This is worth millions of credits. Park breathed, scanning the inventory lists. And all of it was legally purchased and properly documented. Hannah pulled up one of the containers, reading the shipping manifest. This belonged to a human medical relief mission to the Tau Ceti colonies. Magistrate Velta declared it dangerous biological materials and had the entire crew imprisoned. For bioterrorism, while they were dying in the mines, Zixka was selling their medicine to the highest bidder. Sunho added bitterly. As if summoned by their conversation, the storage bay's main doors hissed open. Commander Zixka strode in, his scale shifting to aggressive red patterns, his multiple eyes fixed on the humans with undisguised contempt. What is the meaning of this intrusion? He hissed, his translator giving his words a sibilant quality. This is a restricted area. Hannah stepped forward, her diplomatic credentials floating in a holographic display beside her. Commander Zixka, I am Deputy Ambassador Lee Hanover, Terran Federation. You are hereby formally accused of theft, conspiracy, violation of interstellar trade agreements, and crimes against sapient beings. Zixka's scales shifted to surprised yellow. Then back to angry red. Impossible. You cannot charge a station commander with crimes against humans. They are merely traders, not true citizens of the galaxy. Commander, Park said quietly. You just confessed to systematic discrimination in front of 3 Terran diplomatic officers and a recording device. I believe humans have a saying about digging holes. Round them, the evidence of corruption and cruelty mounted like a tide. What had started as a simple undercover investigation had uncovered a criminal conspiracy that reached the highest levels of SDA. Shin Command, the aliens who had dismissed humans as inferior traders, were about to learn that Earth's children were far more dangerous than they appeared. Hannah smiled grimly as she watched Zixka's scales cycle through confused colors. Commander, I think it's time we had a longer conversation about your business practices. The Grand Tribunal chamber on Galactic Station Alpha stretched like a cathedral of justice, its crystalline walls reaching toward a dome that showed the swirling colors of the nebula beyond. Representatives from 47 different worlds sat in curved tiers, their varied forms creating a tapestry of galactic civilization. At the center of it all, the tribunal's 3 judges presided, the ancient ethereal whose energy form pulsed with wisdom, a massive titan whose rocky features had witnessed millennia of conflict, and a graceful Aquarian whose translucent body flowed like living water. In the defendant's dock, Magistrate Velta looked small and dim, his once brilliant crystalline form now flickering with nervous energy. Beside him sat Commander Zixka, his scales locked in a dull gray of defeat, and 3 other station officials who had been caught in the web of corruption. The same beings who had once dismissed humans as primitive traders now faced the full weight of galactic justice. Deputy Ambassador Lee Hannah stood at the prosecutor's podium, her uniform crisp and her presence commanding. Behind her, a team of human legal experts worked with quiet efficiency, their quantum computers processing evidence at speeds that made even the advanced AI systems of other species seem sluggish. Honored judges, Hannah began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. What we present today is not merely a case of corruption, but a systematic campaign of species-based persecution that violates the fundamental principles upon which our galactic community is built. The main display screen, a massive holographic projector that dominated the chamber, came to life with shipping manifests, financial records, and prisoner documentation. The evidence flowed like a river of data, each piece building upon the last to create an undeniable picture of conspiracy. The defendants would have you believe that their actions were justified enforcement of trade regulations. Hannah continued, manipulating the display with practiced ease. But the evidence tells a different story. Computer, display prosecution. Exhibit Alpha 7. The hologram showed a detailed analysis of cargo seizures over the past years. The statistics were damning. Human cargo was seized at a rate 347% higher than any other species, despite humans maintaining the lowest violation rate for actual contraband. From the observation gallery, the rescued human prisoners watched with barely contained emotion. Kim Jin-woo, now cleaned up and wearing fresh clothes, leaned forward as Hannah displayed the engineering schematics that had been confiscated from his ship. This defendant, Hannah said, gesturing towards Zixka, claimed these engine modifications were dangerous alien technology. In reality, they were efficiency improvements that exceeded galactic safety standards by 200%. The real crime was that a human engineer had created something the defendant couldn't understand, and therefore couldn't steal. The ethereal judge's energy form pulsed with interest. Counselor, please elaborate on the systematic nature of these violations. Hannah nodded, calling up a new display. Honored Judge, the pattern is clear. Human traders were specifically targeted not for their supposed crimes, but for the value of their cargo and the exploitability of their imprisonment. Computer, show the correlation matrix. The holographic display shifted to show a complex web of connections, rested humans, confiscated cargo, shell companies, and private sales. The threads of conspiracy stretched across the station like a spider's web. With Velta and Zixka sitting at the center, the defendants established a system where human traders were arrested on fabricated charges. Their cargo was stolen and resold through false companies. And the traders themselves were forced into unpaid labor. This was not justice. This was industrial-scale theft disguised as law enforcement. Commander Zixka as defense attorney, a sharp-tongued Vorthan with multiple tentacles for arms, rose to object on the judges. My client was merely following established procedures for dealing with suspected contraband. The humans in question were clearly what? Hannah interrupted, her voice cutting like a blade, clearly inferior. Let me show you what these inferior humans accomplished while imprisoned in your client's facilities. The display changed to show technical diagrams and efficiency reports. Human prisoners increased mining productivity by 67%, redesigned the station's power grid to reduce energy consumption by 40%, and solved 3 separate engineering problems that had puzzled the station's technical staff for months, all while being fed subsistence rations and forced to work 18-hour shifts. The chamber erupted in surprised murmurs as the full scope of the exploitation became clear. The Titan judge's rocky features shifted with what might have been anger. Furthermore, Hannah continued, her voice rising with controlled passion. The defendant's own communications revealed their true motivations. Computer, play audio file Delta 12. Zixka's voice filled the chamber, captured during a private conversation with Velta. These humans are useful pets. They work harder than any other species when properly motivated, and their technology is more advanced than they pretend. We should keep as many as possible for our own projects. The silence that followed was deafening. Even Zixka's own defense attorney looked horrified. The prosecution rests, Hannah said quietly. These defendants didn't just break the law, they perverted it. They used their positions of authority to prey upon those they considered weak, only to discover that humans are far from helpless. Today, we ask for justice not just for the humans who suffered, but for every being who believes in the equal protection that our laws promise. The judges conferred in a language of light and sound that transcended species barriers. When the ethereal judge finally spoke, its voice resonated with the weight of absolute authority. This tribunal finds the defendants guilty of all charges. The evidence presented by the Terran delegation demonstrates not only criminal conduct, but a fundamental betrayal of the trust placed in these officials, the precision, thoroughness, and legal expertise displayed by the human prosecutors has impressed this court greatly. Velta's crystalline formed into almost nothing as the sentence was read. 20 years in maximum security detention, full restitution to all victims, and permanent banishment from positions of authority. Zixka fared no better. His scales, cycling through colors of despair as his fate was sealed as the gavel fell. Ending the trial, the human observers erupted in quiet celebration. Kim Jin-woo wiped tears from his eyes as he watched his former captors led away in energy shackles. Hannah gathered her materials with the satisfaction of a job well done. The same aliens who had once called humans primitive smugglers had just witnessed the full power of human justice, precision, and determination. The galaxy would not soon forget the lesson that Earth's children were far more formidable than they appeared 6 months after the trial. Nexus 7 barely resembled the corrupt trading post it had once been. The station's corridors now, armed with a different energy, one of fairness and opportunity rather than fear and exploitation. Where once human traders had skulked in the shadows, now they walked with confidence alongside their alien counterparts. Deputy Ambassador Lehana stood in the renovated command center, watching the morning shift change through the massive viewport. The old security force of brutal Gordonian forces had been replaced by a mixed team of humans, Zephyrians, and reformed Gordoni who actually believed in justice. The difference was like night and day. Ambassador called Lieutenant Park Suman, one of the new human security chiefs. The weekly trade statistics are in. Human cargo throughput is up 340% from last year, and complaint filings are down to almost zero. Hannah smiled, reviewing the data on her personal tablet. What about the new judicial review process? Working perfectly, every detention now requires approval from both the primary magistrate and the secondary review board with mixed species representation. No single being can make arbitrary decisions anymore. Through the command center's speakers, the station's new air announced the arrival of another cargo convoy. And like the old system where human ships were automatically flagged for additional screening, the new protocols treated all vessels equally. Scanning procedures were standardized. Inspection times were regulated, and appeals processes were clearly defined. Kim Jin-woo, now serving as the station's chief engineering officer, emerged from a maintenance shaft with a satisfied grin. His old prisoner's coveralls had been replaced by an official uniform bearing both Terran and Galactic Station Authority insignia. The new power grid modifications are online, he reported to Hannah. Efficiency is up another 12% thanks to the hybrid human Zephyrian crystal technology. The Zephyrians are brilliant with energy flow, but they needed our expertise with quantum containment systems, cooperation instead of exploitation. Hannah observed, amazing what happens when species work together as equals. The command center doors slid open to admit Choi Sun-ho, who now headed the station's new trade compliance division. Behind him walked Magistrate Carl Sierra, a young ethereal whose energy form glowed with enthusiasm rather than the bitter cynicism that had marked Velta's tenure. Ambassador, we've received a formal request from the Andorian Trade Consortium, Sun-ho announced. They want Nexus 7 to serve as the model for reforming stations throughout the Outer Rim. Apparently, word has spread about our success rates. Magistrate Carl Sierra's energy form pulsed with pride. The legal protocols you established have reduced processing time by 60% while increasing accuracy by 85%. Other stations are demanding to know how we accomplished such improvements. Simple, Hannah replied. We stopped assuming that different meant inferior, and we started leveraging each species' strengths instead of exploiting their vulnerabilities. The massive main display screen activated, showing an incoming priority transmission from the Galactic Council chambers. The familiar form of High Counselor Zethran appeared. His ancient features grave, but respectful. Deputy Ambassador Hannah. The High Counselor began. The Council has reviewed the quarterly reports from Nexus 7 with great interest. The transformation you have overseen exceeds all expectations. Thank you, High Counselor. The credit belongs to all species working together. Indeed. Which brings me to the reason for this transmission. Zethran paused, his expression becoming formal. The Galactic Council hereby extends a formal invitation to the Terran Federation to assume permanent representation on the Inner Council of Worlds. The command center fell silent. Even the background hum of machinery seemed to pause as the magnitude of the offer sank in. The Inner Council was the galaxy's most exclusive governing body, limited to only 7 species deemed worthy of guiding interstellar civilization. Furthermore, Zethran continued, we wish to establish the Terran Academy of Interstellar Justice, with Deputy Ambassador Hannah as its founding director. Your legal innovations and diplomatic excellence have proven that humanity possesses wisdom that benefits all species through the viewport. They could see ships from dozens of worlds docking at the station. Craxian cargo haulers worked alongside Terran freighters, while Zephyrian passenger liners shared berths with Gordani mining vessels. The diversity that had once been a source of conflict now represented the station's greatest strength. High Counselor, Hannah replied formally. The Terran Federation accepts both honors with gratitude and humility. We pledge to serve the cause of justice for all sapient beings. As the transmission ended, cheers erupted throughout the command center. Kim Jinwoo pumped his fist in the air, while Sun Ho grinned widely. Even Magistrate Kyle Sierra's energy form danced with joy. From the detention cells to the Inner Council, Park Suman observed with wonder. Who would have thought that resting one troublesome human would lead to this? Hannah looked out at the bustling station, where humans and aliens worked side by side in harmony. In the distance, she could see the prison transport carrying Velta and Zixka to their new accommodations, a maximum security facility where they would spend the next 20 years contemplating our mistakes. They saw a quiet human trader and assumed weakness. She said thoughtfully, they never considered that quiet confidence might be the most dangerous trait of all. Humans don't shout about their capabilities. We simply demonstrate them when necessary. A new group of human traders was disembarking from a freshly arrived cargo ship, their faces bright with hope rather than fear. They walked openly through the station's corridors, their heads held high, knowing they would receive fair treatment under the law. The transformation was complete. What had begun as an attempt to silence one troublesome human had ended with humanity taking its rightful place among the galaxy's greatest civilizations. The quiet strength that aliens had mistaken for weakness had become the foundation for a new era of interstellar justice. In the end, the galaxy learned a valuable lesson. Never underestimate the species that explores the stars not for conquest, but for the simple desire to make things better for everyone. The end.